Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. All right, everyone, let's kick things off with today's story about a Florida mom, her clever solution to the summer heat, and a Karen meltdown that'll leave you shaking your head. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Karen demanded my kids' tumblers, so I sent her to a day full of chaos. This happened many years ago when my now grown kids were 5 and 6 years old. I had a very old but reliable van. The problem is, while my van had AC, it didn't have it in the back. Since it was summer, hotter than hell, and humid being Florida, and I had a full day of errands, I put an old cooler in the van. My first stop was the CVS store, where I bought 2 bags of ice, a 24-bottle water pack, bottles of juice, and because my kids spotted it at the same time I did, 3 tumblers that resembled large soda cans, but with different pictures on them. One had a beach scene, another an ocean theme, and mine had a lighthouse. I like it so much, and it was for sale, a buy one, get one free, so I also got one for my mom. Hers had a lovely garden. Anyways, my boys wanted to hold their cans, and that's where we encountered a Karen. As we're headed outside with our purchases, Karen and her 2 kids around the same age as my kids spotted what my kids were holding and started bugging the crap out of their mom for the same thing. Instead of being a mom, she blew up at me. She started demanding that I return the soda can so that her kids would stop bugging her. First, I turned around to make sure it was me she was going off on. Then I asked in a disbelieving tone, "Me? You're talking to me? Who the F do you think you are? You ain't my mom, dad, or my boss, and even if you were, I'd still tell you to F off." Karen had the nerve to scream at me that her kids would pester her until I returned the soda cans. That sounds like a you problem. Then, just to bug her, but let my kids know I didn't mean it and it wouldn't actually happen, I turned around and winked before telling them, "You know, I think we should go to Dairy Queen, the candy store. Oh, and we should also go to Toys R Us." Good Lord, the racket that went up was absolutely amazing, and her anger turned her skin interesting shades of reds and purples with a vein sticking out across her forehead. And while that was going on, I was getting my kids into the van. I brought the cooler near to the door and poured all the ice in before putting juice and some water bottles in. Then I took out 1 water bottle and opened one of the tumblers that my kids had and rinsed it out in front of Karen. I heard her incredulous tone when she said, "They aren't soda cans? They were empty? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were rude and assumed you could demand stupid crap from me." I added ice and filled it up with water before doing the same thing to the other and mine. I screwed the lids back on, and surprisingly, her hadn't noticed. Instead, they were still screaming their heads off about soda, candy, and toys. She turned around and started screaming at her kids to stop screaming while walking away. Halfway to the store, she finally screamed that if they shut up, she would take them to all those places. Instant silence. I did end up buying ice cream for my kids after dinner, since they'd been so good that day. If she'd kept her mouth shut, minded her own business, and been a good mom, she wouldn't have had to go all the places I mentioned. Karen really thought she could boss a stranger around because her kids wanted something your kids had? Unbelievable. Dropping the Dairy Queen, candy store, Toys R Us bomb? Genius. You basically handed her a master class on how not to parent, and she walked straight into it. Karma served up fast, and your kids still got their treat in the end. Well played. And our second story. Karen loses it over a pet bed, gets proven wrong, and still walks off like a hero. So I've been a cashier for about 6 months now, and it's generally been pretty chill. I get angry customers once in a while, and I'm usually able to diffuse the situation without having to bend over backwards to make the customers happy too. I don't like letting customers get away with their crap just because they don't want to read sales signs properly. So today, a woman and her daughter come up, and I go through the usual routine. When I tell her the price, she tells me that there's a sign that says all pet beds are 50% off, so hers should be too. Now, I hear this all the time with a bunch of other items in the store, and I know for a fact that sales signs will also say to look for a red line through the barcode and or a red clearance tag. Of course, her items had none of those things on them. I politely tell her that below the 50% off signs, it tells you what you need to look for and only select items are clearance. This lady is adamant about the signage and that the sign only says 50% off. So why is her item full price? My go-to line is usually, "I'm sorry, sir, ma'am, but I have no control over what the sign says. What I do know is, store policy, 1 clearance items. Would you like to go back and find one on sale?" And I know it's only select pet beds because I had to deal with this same problem a week ago. I can only get the first part of my lines out before she just effing loses it. "That's not what I was implying, B. I know you can't control the sign," and keeps on ranting about how I have a bad attitude. At this point, I'm done with her BS and just finish the transaction on her other items without saying anything to her, which I guess pisses her off more because as she walks off, she just keeps ranting about my attitude and how I'm a bee that must hate my job. All I do is tell her to have a nice day and go on with my work while I'm trying to hold back my rage tears. This lady goes to my coworker on the next register and demands to speak to a manager, and when my manager comes up, she rants to them about me and my bad attitude and this stupid item. Manager then checks the price of the pet bed with her scanner, and what a shocker, it's not on sale. Lady looks at me crying and just walks off like she didn't just make a huge scene in a store full of people that saw all of it happen. I'm lucky my managers and director are really great people and let me go home to cool off because I just could not get myself to calm down after that. I was just seeing red at that point, and I'm the type that cries when peed off, which is just embarrassing, LOL. What gets me is how she doubled down, even dragging her manager into it. Like, lady, if you're gonna throw a tantrum, at least be right about it. And the classic walk off after realizing she was wrong. Classic Karen move. No apology, no acknowledgement of the mess she caused, just slinking away like it didn't happen. At least your manager had your back and let you take time to cool off. Crying when you're mad isn't embarrassing. It's just your body's way of saying, enough of this crap. And our last story. Karen claimed my land. I live on a beautiful property nestled in a forest clearing surrounded by about 3 acres of woods with a serene river cutting through it. A few weeks ago, while walking through the wooded area on my property, I stumbled across something odd, a no trespassing sign nailed to a tree. It was the kind of standard sign you'd see in this area warning against hunting, fishing, and trespassing. But what stopped me cold was the name scrawled across the bottom, an initial and last name I didn't recognize, definitely not mine. At first I figured it was some kind of mix-up, maybe a previous owner left it there, but the sign looks brand new. Then I realized my northern neighbor had recently sold their plot of land, and the new owners must have assumed this section of the woods was part of their purchase. I decided to handle the situation the polite way by talking to them. I walked over to their house and knocked on the door. The wife opened it, and I immediately knew I was in for a ride. She was the textbook definition of a Karen, arms crossed, impatient huffing, and an expression that screamed, "What do you want?" I introduced myself and explained the situation, pointing out the no trespassing sign and clarifying that the land it was on was mine. "I just wanted to let you know," I said, keeping my tone polite, "so there's no confusion down the road." Her response? Classic Karen. "That's our land," she said sharply. "We've already marked it. You must be mistaken." "Actually, I'm not," I replied, staying calm. "I have the property survey and deed showing that section is part of my land." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Listen," she snapped, "why don't you go back to your house and leave us alone? If you keep bothering us, I'll call the police." I was taken aback, but decided to give it one more shot. A few days later, I caught her and her husband outside while they were gardening. I figured maybe her husband, being a fellow landowner, would be more reasonable. Nope. When I explained the situation again, Karen cut me off and declared, "My husband's a lawyer, and he knows the law. You're trespassing right now by standing on our property. If you come here again, we'll have you evicted so fast you won't know what hit you." With that, they turned their backs on me and walked inside. Fine. If they wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. The first thing I did was remove the sign. It was on my property after all, so I had every right to take it down, Then I hired a surveyor to mark the exact boundary lines with stakes, leaving no room for doubt. Once the property lines were clearly marked, I started planning my next move, a fence. A nice, tall, sturdy fence that would make it crystal clear where my property ended and theirs began. When the construction crew arrived to start digging post holes, Karen stormed over like a hurricane. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she screeched, her face turning red as she marched toward me. "Building a fence," I replied coolly, gesturing to the marked boundary lines. "On my property." "That's our land," she yelled. "I told you we'll call the police if you try anything." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms, "but I'd recommend showing them your deed before you waste their time. The survey markers are right there." Karen stomped back to her house, and sure enough, minutes later, a police car pulled into my driveway. I greeted the officer with the property survey in hand, along with copies of my deed and the contractor's permits. Karen came storming out of her house, finger pointed like a weapon. "He's building a fence on our property. This is illegal." The officer calmly asked for evidence, and I handed over my documents. After a quick review, the officer looked at Karen and said, "Ma'am, this is not your property, it's his. He's well within his rights to build a fence here." But my husband's a lawyer," she sputtered. "He'll sue." The officer shrugged. "You're welcome to take it to court, but you'll need to prove ownership. Right now, this survey is legal proof that the land belongs to him. If you interfere, that'll be trespassing." Karen turned to me, fuming. "You'll regret this," she hissed before stomping back to her house. The fence went up without further incident, and I have to say it's a beauty, 8 feet tall with reinforced posts and a nice clean finish. It not only keeps them out, but also blocks the view of their yard entirely. The audacity to plant a no trespassing sign on someone else's property is wild. Good job, OP, for standing your ground. The fence is the cherry on top. Karen's tantrum when the police sided with you must have been the sweetest justice. And let's be real, having an 8-foot barrier blocking their views probably the best addition to your serene forest property. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.